Hi there, my name's Deb Antonik and I'm going to be doing a make and take project for Stampendous today, and we're going to create these kind of fun little light bulbs. They're kind of all the trend right now, the little light bulbs, the wildflowers and stuff in them. So what we're going to do is these are MDF ornaments, and I'm going to show you how to prep the ornaments and stamp them and get them all ready, or prepare them and paint them, get them all ready to be stamped onto a painted surface as opposed to painting on paper. And for this project, we are going to use one of the new stamp sets released in January of 2022. And I just love this. It's called Wildflowers, perfectly clear stamps. And what I like about this is so versatile. You can create so many different designs with this. So I thought we'd have a little fun today and work with them and see what we can make. And this stamp number is actually SSC1420. And yes, very, very fun set. So to start with, stamping on wood, stamping on paper, process is the same, but what the difference is surface prep for wood, as well as, of course, the inks and stuff that we use. So I'm going to start quickly with the preparation for it. Now I do have my brush. This is my brush that we're going to use, and it's here as a marker. It's going to stop me from sliding way up above my piece. So when I prep MDF, it doesn't require a lot of sealing and stuff, but MDF does absorb moisture. So, you don't necessarily want to put a wood sealer and stuff on it. So what I'll use is gesso. Any white gesso will do just fine. So in this case, for projects like this, I like to use just, this one that I grab at Walmart and stuff. And we are going to prepare this surface in a super simple way. I like using these little makeup sponges. And these ones, I get these from the dollar store. And it just come in a little package. They're cheap ones, but what I like about them is because they're actually coarse. They're not really super flimsy like, the good quality ones. So, the cheaper the better. If they've got like a good sturdy foam feel to them, then they're going to do exactly what you want them to do. So what I do is I do take my paint, slide it over here, and just a pile of it on my palette. And I'm going to dip my sponge in here, and I'm just going to work this paint into the sponge. And just I want it nice and juicy, but I want to build it into there so that we do have the paint starting to seep up, the gesso, the paint, whatever, starting to seep up into it so that we know it's getting juicy. And then we pounce. And this is so quick. This is a super fast way to prep the surfaces. It goes on nice and smooth. It doesn't have to be a perfect coat. It's okay that it's a little imperfect and stuff because it's an undercoat. It's a sealer. It's an undercoat. It allows me to put a nice coat of white on. And there's something about using the gesso that I just love in that it does help me get a really super smooth surface when I'm done. Because the idea of stamping onto a wooden surface, of course, if you want a perfect image, is still having that smooth surface. So if you were to stamp on pine or something like that, there's an imperfection to it. And so you won't get a perfectly good stamp. So MDF is wonderful. Chipboard is wonderful. And of course you got your paper. And see how nice that goes on so quick? And it also dries quickly too. So then we're going to do the second one. Do these. It just goes so fast. And I'll show you a little trick after when I'm finished here is that you can keep reusing these sponges. You can wash them if you wanted to. Sometimes I'll just throw them in my water bin when I'm finished with them. But it goes on so quick. It's not making the MDF wet. MDF can actually swell up a little bit when it's too wet. Of course, it shrinks back to the original size, but it does a little bit. So there. That is super. It's coated. It's nice. It's finished. Another thing I like to have on hand is my baby wipes. I always have baby wipes when I work on this type of project because I can clean my surface off, just like so. Nice and clean. And these will dry really, really fast. But while these are drying, I'm just going to do a quick little chat about inks. So when we're going to stamp onto a surface other than paint or other than a paper surface, is you want to have a archival permanent ink. You don't want something that's going to reactivate with water or mediums or anything like that. So my choices, my proven choices, are the Stays On Jet Black. It's a solvent-based, fast-drying, solvent-based solvent ink, yes. Or the Ranger Archival, acid-free, permanent, waterproof, and it is also, I believe, it's a solvent-based. But anyway, these you can put mediums and varnishes and anything you want over top, pen, the whole bit. If you were to use some of the inks that we would use, say, as an example, like VersaFine or VersaClair inks, and a lot of the other inks, these are what are a pigment ink, and they will bleed. So you can do watercolor, you can do inks, you can do just what any other medium over top. But if you do, say, a varnish or a matte medium, like, you know, in mixed media and stuff, you might want a matte medium on some additional things. It will bleed, it will smudge, it will smear, and ruin your project. So I love this if I'm working on watercolor paper or anything like that. Always fabulous. But if my surface has got a coat of gesso or paint on it, I go straight and I stick with my archivals. To stick with these. You can't go wrong. They're a little bit more expensive, but you can't go wrong. And now, just going to give this a dry quickly. My Ranger Heat It tool. I just love these. They're quiet. They heat my project up quickly. They don't blow all my stuff everywhere, which I like. Give that a quick dry. And you'll notice as well, if you feel it, you can feel it does raise the grain a little bit. And that's how you know that it's soaked into the surface. And you usually get that with any water-based product. So you can feel there is a texture to it when you rub it. Same as, you know, water-based product on any wood. So what I do is I have these little sanding sponges, these things. Get these from the Home Depot, your home department store, whatever. These are wonderful. Just give them a quick smooth. And they're just like, oh, so smooth. It's fabulous. Just very quick. I'm not trying to sand the paint off. It just takes the little fuzzy bits off and gives it that smooth finish. Which basically is now it's as close to paper as you're going to get. And now with my same sponge, I'm going to go into my light buttermilk. And light buttermilk is what I'm going to base coat these with. And I will often use either light buttermilk or warm white. And I actually did use warm white. So let's use warm white instead. You could use buttermilk. It doesn't matter. Light buttermilk. It's just an off-white. So any off-white will actually do. So for these, I'm going to use warm white. And same sponge, because the white can mix with the gesso. That's not a problem. Put those on there. And the same. I'm going to sponge. Load up my sponge, nice and juicy. Go about the same business right here. Super quick. So I'll usually do this, and if I want, like say I'm using a different color, with the white it's not a problem. But if I cut a color that maybe is going to be a little bit blotchy or something, I might do a finish coat with just the brush, just to give it a heavier coat. But these won't need them. Because of all the washes that we put over top. You can go around the sides of the ornaments if you want to. Which I might do, you know, when I'm finished the top so that my fingers don't get all dirty. So there's a nice quick coat in the white. And then this guy. Oops, don't want to go in there. That was the gesso. And this actually does dry quite quickly too, which I like. What I like about this too is you don't get any brush marks. To me, it just makes it feel like I've got paper. This is all in how I tell it, you know, tell myself. It feels like it's paper. Yeah. So part of this, I mean, it's something you could do. It will be, of course, in the make and take instructions to have these prepped ahead of time, but I thought it would be good to show the prep process for people that maybe don't understand or are curious as to why I list it in the process that I do. Everybody does things differently. This is what I do. I like it. I like the surface I get from it. And this is really only if I want to get that really nice, perfect stamp. If I want that nice finish. Now, if you want, I'm going to show you the difference because this is what this is all about, showing different things, is one of them, I'll show you the difference if I base coat. So now I might want to take and just give it that little extra coat. And this will actually, believe it or not, give you an even smoother finish if you take the brush for your final coat, even though it may not need it. Depends on the project that I'm doing. But I think in this case, I'm going to give that one nice finish coat. And this is like 2 coats of the acrylic, which kind of gives it that nice little coating. All nice and ready for stamps. And it gives you a nice clean finish if that's, you know, some people really like that. Some doesn't matter. I'm not too worried about the base because that gets paid gray. Okay, and we'll do the other one quickly. And of course, you are going to have a little bit of drying time between this. There, nice smooth finish. And it just gives it that little added coating. Now, if you want to do the sides, you can. You can paint them, which is way too much work for my liking. So I'm going to get my sponge and go around. And just give it a quick paint on the sides. And always watch your drops coming around the front. One, two. How quick is this, eh? There. Just make sure I got no little bumps. Now sometimes what I'll do when they're dry is I might give them another sand, but they probably won't need to. So I'm just going to dry them quickly. There. Nice and dry. And, you know, I can clean up my little mess. Yeah. Okay. So now the fun begins. So you don't have to follow my directions. You can, you know, you can have a little fun in any direction. You can move them around in different ways if you like. But with these, what I like to do is you want to have a flat surface. Wood has a tendency not necessarily to be as flat as the table surface would be. So you want to stamp, make sure you have a nice flat surface, which I do, and a stamping block. This is an acrylic stamping block. I try to have it so it's the size of the stamp, so it'll accommodate the stamp. So in these case, I have a smaller one that I like to use, but it's not quite long enough. So in this case, I'm going to use a bigger one. And these stamps, if you've never used them before, they're called clear, perfectly clear stamps. So they come on acrylic, on a little clear plastic acrylic acetate or whatever you call it. You peel the backing part off. This will protect it when you put it away. And this other one is where they stick. And you can actually tell where they go because they have a nice little colored image, which is great if you're never too sure what colors to use. It's a great idea. And then I'll take my stamp off, peel it off. Then I take my block, so it's got a nice sticky side, and I will put it on my block. Now this one I know is going to be this one here. So I know that I put a little curve in it. You can bend this a little bit if you want. You know, if you wanted to bend it a little bit, you could. Otherwise, you just kind of let it flop down. It'll land where it is. So they are bendable if you want to go around a corner. So now you can see that it's backwards, but when we put it this way, it's going to match up perfectly with that, which is going to be this one. Now, this is where it gets kind of fun. This is a brand new stamp. So what I will do when I have a brand new stamp is I'm going to need a piece of paper. And the reason I want a piece of paper is I want to see what my image is going to come out like. I want to make sure that I'm getting a nice, clear image. So I'm going to use the archival only because this is a newer ink. This one I've had it for a little while. And if I want to try to get a foolproof first time print, I want to use a newer ink pad. And I'm going to show you two different ways that I do this. This is if you want to stamp, just stamp. I also have a stamping tool. You don't rub, although we'd like to think it would get more ink on it. It doesn't, it actually takes it off. Just pat it. Now the first image, when you've got a brand new stamp set, it's almost like you have to take the sizing out of your brushes or something. It has a thing. So you put it down and just put a little pressure. You don't want to be rocking it or anything. You just want that little bit of pressure. And then we take it off. Look how nice that is. But that now it's got the stamp ready to be used, which is important. So now that I've tested my stamp and I've made sure it works, I'm going to get my wood out. Now it doesn't go onto wood quite as easily as it'll go onto paper. And that is why in your list of instructions I have recommended an Identi-Pen. An Identi-Pen has this nice fine little edge. So if we have any imperfect lines, we can go and we could just fix them with the Identi-Pen. It's also permanent, so it won't move around with your inks or mediums or anything like that. So every time you stamp, you re-ink. And actually, another little thing that we want in our toolbox, sticky notes. Just going to put this here. And the sticky note will stop me from stamping in places that I don't want to stamp. So I have a line across the bottom here. So I'm just going to put this sticky note down. So that's going to protect. It's going to mask off any areas that I do not want to ink. So I'm going to do this. And then we have to say the little stamper's prayer and hold our mouth a certain way and curl our toes and do all the things that we feel we need to do to hopefully get a perfect image. So just kind of everybody take a breath, put it down, straight down, put pressure. You want to do pressure. You don't want to rock. If you rock it, it could slip. And carefully lift. Oh, look at that. Oh, yes. That turned out perfect. And then, you know, if it's permanent ink, it's not going to matter. But I will take a little bit off with the baby wipe just to clean it off a little bit. Then, because I hate losing them and I have lost pieces before, I'll peel it off and I'm going to put it right back in this little spot right here. Right where it belongs. And now I'm going to take this little guy, which is here. And if you put it the right way around, you can sort of match up with which ones you think it would be, which is this guy. But you know, you can use any flowers you want. That's the fun of this. And because this is smaller, I might use my smaller one because sometimes using a block that is oversized can create you as much problems as using an undersized block or no block. And you don't have to use them this thick too. They do come in thinner. You can pick them up at your local craft store. So same thing. I'm going to ink. And then I'm going to get my piece of paper because this is a brand new stamp. First time used. And I'll show you too, like maybe you want to sort of build your layout on a piece of paper as well before you start stamping on your ornament. So you can get a feel for how this is going to line up. So see if I'm on here. So I'll say, I know it's going to sort of come along here. Put my pressure. And this is okay. I didn't put pressure up here, but if this was on my wood, I would take my ident pen. I would just finish this off. See? Now, no worries, no panic, no fret. After that first initial panic. And so now, re-ink. And this just comes down to even pressure. I didn't put the even pressure on it. And now, get this guy out again. And you wouldn't want to ink this and then walk away for a period of time. You would want to do it right away. So I'm lining it up, trying not to overlap any of my leaves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it as close as possible, right about here. Put my pressure and lift. And see, I did the same thing here. It was just a fear of pressure of rocking it too much. So that's okay. I'm going to take my little pen and I'm going to put my leaf in there. That's perfectly fine. No problems. So you can either do this with your baby wipe, just takes the initial ink off. Or I also will sometimes just stamp on a piece of paper towel. That works too. And then put it back on here. So now I've got the big purple one, which is lining it up, which is this one here. So I'm going to go back to my bigger block now because of the length. Put it on there and ink. I do have a video on my YouTube channel, and the link to the YouTube channel is off my paintingwithdeb.com website, and I believe you can link off of it from Stampendous as well, or Stampendous' YouTube. I do know that they are interconnected somehow, where I do show you how to stamp with paint. So if anybody doesn't want the ink pad, there definitely is a way to go and see how I do all this. There, so I've primed this one. Now, here. Being very careful not to go off camera. I do tend to. Okay. Sometimes I might want to turn my piece just so it's better for me to use. And now I'm going to line it up because I don't want everything to kind of, the leaves to overlap. I mean, it's not the end of the world if they do. So I'm going to bring it up, curl it. I can go this way, right about here. Hold my breath, plop it down. If you get a tiny little overlap, you know, it's easily, it'll disappear, but you don't want to have like lines going through your flower petals and stuff if you can avoid it. Okay. Oh, that worked. Yay. Now it's a little bit faint down here, but it's not bad. It's not horrible. But if you were, you know, if it did bother you, you could certainly go through and just darken them up a little bit if you wanted to. But you don't have to, unless it bothers you. That one doesn't really bother me because it's not that bad. And let's see, clean it. And put on my thing. And let's see. Oh, I love this little, which one is it? Oh yeah, this little guy is this one here. So this one here. We'll take that one. And I can go back to my smaller block for this one. And they just suction, they just stick right on these acrylic blocks. It's fabulous. If they ever don't thick, just wipe the back with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. It's perfect. Fixes everything. And in here, good. You see how nice it goes on paper though. But this is such a great way for just doing a whole bunch of ornaments. Now this one, I'm going to, this is what I do when I have these where I don't want to get a line through something that I don't want. So the way I've got these ones lined up is this one here is going to go through this leaf by the way I've got it laid out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off this flower on the bottom. So I'm masking this flower off with my paper, my sticky paper there. I'm going to re-ink this because I had it sitting out. And you know, I can add the rest of the stem with my pen. I'd rather do that. And then I will figure out where I want this. Yeah, that's good. And see now, it didn't go through there, but it will go up right up to it. So I can finish that line off now with my pen and just kind of extend it so it looks more complete. There, that easy. Instead of having a line that you had to deal with. So that's the first one, and you know, they're pretty similar. Not too bad. We did good there. So now the next one is the tall, skinny guy. Put that back on there and get these ones. Let's see what we did here. Okay. So this one, that's these. Same thing. Take it off. And you know, they're pretty foolproof. You can stretch them. Nothing bad is happening to it while I'm stretching it there. Put that on here. And I'm going to get my paper, my little sticky note back out. Onto here. And put that over there, this here. Okay, so the inking again on a flat surface better. And the solvent inks, the rubbing alcohol will clean your blocks. Isopropyl. I have one here somewhere. Isopropyl. This is what you can use to clean like the inks off of here and backs of your stamps if they don't stick anymore. And of course, it's a new stamp. Go back on my paper. Just to prime it. Okay. And ink again. And I prefer to ink from top down because then I can see where the ink is going instead of turning my piece around and stamping it like this. I seem to have more control this way. Unless it's something really tiny, you're just dip and stamp. And I always put my lids back on. Okay, so this guy is basically from, that needs to be over here. Here we go. Don't want anything to obscure your pressure down. There, looks good enough. Once it's on there, it's on there. So you know what, you can move the flowers around if you feel that you've got something where it shouldn't be. There's a loose flower you can stick on there if you had a problem. There we go. It's good. This is fun. You can just build and create. And sometimes I'll just practice on paper, and then when I see what sort of format I want to follow, then I go on wood. And you know what? It's only wood. Sand it off, coat of primer or gesso, and start over. It's not the end of the world. Can't wreck too many of them. You can wreck them. Don't get me wrong, but you can't cause too many issues. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so back to this fun little flower here, that guy. And this is a good way too, is you can lay it down and sort of see where you want it. And you can go like this. Yeah, got a little ghost print there. So don't do that, you'll get a ghost print. You don't want a ghost print. You won't always, it just needed to dry. I had it dried, so I can use this now. Kind of go over where I was. And it's so light, it's not going to cause me any problems anyway. There. See? No problems. That's the difference of wiping it when you're done. And let's see. The blue one here, which is that guy. goes on here. So we'll do it the right way. Won't show you the wrong way to do things. And let's see. So sort of similar. There, pressure down. And I did do the same thing on the top that I'm doing, and I know what it is. It's just the putting the pressure. So I'm just going to kind of, they're just little jaggy things on the top. Nothing we can't fix. Just make it look similar. Just fine. And yeah, this little guy here, which is this little one, which has also already been used. So they've all been used now. So I don't have to prime them. I liked that one. I used it on both. It's funny how I keep doing that. It's the same pattern. And just fix it. It's not the stamp, it's me. It's how I'm holding the block. So afraid to make a mistake on the camera, so. Okay. So another thing you can do is you can always lay these over top and you can sort of see, you know, what the flower would look like as well. Get a feel for different ideas. And I like to put them away as I use them so that I don't make too many messes. There are little bitty flowers here. You could, if you wanted to add some filler flowers, like say you didn't like your layout, then you can just add a flower wherever. That option is there. And then this backing would just go on the back. So I'll put my stamp back away like so. So it's keeping clean. Back into my little plastic sleeve. People store them in different ways. Currently I keep them in the sleeve, especially when I'm working with them like this, because I want to know what the product numbers are. So I always sort of can go back to it. Here, clean and put away. Take this off. And now we've got it two perfectly, wonderfully stamped images. All on screen, just like so. So that part was easy. Now, just going to base coat the bottom. Just because we can. Might as well get that going. And the bottom is base coated in zinc, which is it's a nice pretty gray color. Just zinc. And everything here is painted in washes. Even though we're going to base coat, we're going to do everything in washes, and we're going to do everything with my little little faux squirrel 3/0 quill brush. It's like a watercolor brush. So that's how we're going to paint everything in here. All we're going to need is this brush here and my little angular shaders. Oops. So my quill and an angular shader, and we might even use my little, I have a 1/4 inch angular shader as well, which we may use because it does give us a little bit more control in here. So this one here as well. So if you're not comfortable doing bigger floats, we can just use the little 1/4 inch. So these are the only brushes I'm going to use here. These three. And so I'm going to take my zinc, and I'm going to take my brush, put these up here with my markers, so if they're going to see the bottoms, then there we go. So I'm just going to keep this here just because I don't want to make a mess. Or, yep, that's what we're going to do. But I want to make sure that I am lined up so that I'm straight. So when you put them across, you want to make sure that you're lined up. Fixable. Okay, so with my wash is I wet my brush and I come out and I build a little puddle right in here. This is the water from the brush, right off the brush. I didn't wipe it on paper towel or anything. Then I'm going to pull my zinc into it. So my gray paint into that water puddle. So I can feel the consistency of what I'm getting. And I don't end up with this big watery mess. I have control over it. I can either add more water or I can add more paint. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to do. And then just going to go in here and paint base coat. And I'm going to do this in a couple of coats because I wanted it light to start with. There's the first coat. When it dries, then I'm going to do 2 coats on here. And my other brush of choice is my little mop, which I'll use when I want that one more for the second coat and when I do my shading. I'll mop off excess water. And then this guy here too. The same, more paint. You could base coat these solid, but the whole thing is a washed feel. And I just like how soft and smooth it is. And if you do pity pat it, it just gives you a little bit of a softness to it. You don't want to take it off. You can just soften it. Makes it look more even. And then wipe it off on a piece of towel. So that's the first. And it's better than going solid. You'd rather do 2 coats than have to try to take paint off if it's too dark. Or dry it. And I can take this off now because now I know where my line is. And I can also fix. So I'll go back into my wash. I'm going to pull in just a little bit more paint this time just to darken it up a little bit for the second coat. And I'm going to come along. And now I can make sure that I can get anything that I missed, which was right here. And get my other coat on here. And this is as dark as I want it. I didn't want it any darker than this. And I like the streaks. You get streaks, you can leave them because that's all part of the background. And here. And there. And we'll dry those as well. Okay. So now, with the background, we're going to do something really kind of interesting. We're going to take this tropical blue. Actually, it is tropical blue. Very, very, very light tropical blue. So light that you can barely even see it. Like my tropical blue, it's going to look like this. There is hardly any in my tint. And there's a reason for that. So I'm going to come around with my tropical blue and just kind of wash around my design. And the point of this brush will actually get into these little corners. Fill in these little spots, kind of go around all the flowers, almost rouging like in a color, like if you were coloring with a marker. And because the water is so soft, you're not going to get a harsh edge. And you can very lightly pity pat. It's very watery paint. And it's going to give us just a little hint of the blue. And the same. Come down here. I think I'm going around my flower. It's upside down, I can't tell. And it's just coloring this in. It's just to give it a little hint of color, that's all. Takes the starkness of the white away. And it's very pretty because it is so subtle that you really don't notice it. And the one thing is that you always want to make sure too is to make sure you have clean water in your bin too, or at least a clean side as opposed to your dirty side, so you're not discoloring your water. For this really, really, really light, and I'm still working from this very, very, very thin. And it's also going to come around the outside a little bit. You could float it if you're more inclined, but I'm just going around this way because I'm getting the same look. Just a very light. I'm leaving the white spaces and the white areas open. Very lightly mop to soften. I will go and enhance a float around the outer edge, like when it's all done. This is part of the sort of the completing process. But that's one of the last things that I do, and I just kind of want to finalize the design. And just kind of lightly wash in here. When you're going to do the stamps with washes of the DecoArt acrylic paints, which is all we're using, you want to use the colors that are higher in pigment. So not white-based paints, not pastels. You would go with your vibrant colors. Mostly anything, if you ever have to paint with it, if you have a color and you want to paint with it and you end up having to do 3 or 4 coats and you've got a very highly pigmented color, and that's the colors that we're going for. So your vibrant, bright jewel tone colors almost. They have a lot more transparency. And that's what's allowing us to go and do these very thin washes and not go over the lines and take them away. You can use a bigger mop. I just happen to have, this is the one that I like to use for the stamp small projects like this. And come in here. So it's not around everything, it's just in there, just a hints of color. In here. Of course, you could just use your angle shader, whatever you're comfortable shading, and just very, very, very light. You can use a flat shader, very watery, whatever your favorite watercolor brush is, or round, to get exactly the same process. It's all about what you're comfortable with. With me, for these, it's all about the fact that they hold a lot of water. Here. Easy peasy. Here we go. Okay. So now, this is how we continue painting this whole thing. My go-to yellow is actually bright yellow. So we're going to do everything that's currently yellow, which is a lot actually, because you'd be surprised. Yellow, I use yellow a lot as an overcoat. This has a wash of yellow over top the whole thing when it's finished, which is really kind of fun. So same, take the yellow out into a nice light wash. So it's watery. I think that's on there a little bit. Get that nice little wash of yellow. And the thing is, if you start light, you can always darken it. You can always go over it a second time. Now, here's my paper towel. If I'm worried about it being too watery to work in small areas, I might just tap it on paper towel, just to make sure that I'm not dripping in water. So my little yellow flower right here. You color it in. Well, this is the purple one, but it's actually going to be purple and yellow, so it's going to be kind of cool. So it's going to be yellow shaded and purple, which is kind of fun. Down here. I'm just going to mop that to soften. Mopping it also tones that one down a little bit too, which is what I want because of the purple. This is one that's going to stay yellow because it's going to be shaded and highlighted to brighten the yellow. So that's yellow, and that's yellow. That's that one. And this one, the only one that's yellow is this little one here, the same. So bright yellow. Cool. So that's just a little bit there. And then my favorite, dragon fruit. Dragon fruit is my go-to pink. Because one thing about the acrylics, and I like to use the DecoArt fluid acrylics. I've used a lot for painting stamps. They're higher in pigment. They stay so vibrant. I just love them. They're just harder for people to get. So I've just started using them more, using the acrylics more. And if you have the fluid acrylics, use them. They are stunning. Everything's just so bright. They're just not it's quite as easy to get a hold of them, especially during the lockdowns and the shutdowns of the factories and stuff. So that's why I just use the high pigments. And you can color with your watercolors. You can color with, you know, your favorite markers, anything that's going to be able to go on paint. But I love this. This allows me to be so creative. So this flower is this very light pink. And like I said, so with the regular acrylics, when you water them down, they lose their vibrancy, which is great for this because you get your light value. So I can shade with the same color on here and I'm still using one color. So that's pink in there. And this little point on this brush, so nice. You just get into these little spots, kind of pull that little water bubble around with you and it colors. There. And this one is the same. You can paint quite quickly this way too. This little bobble here and this little bobble there. And there. And this little bobble here. This one's the same. And it looks so light and washed out right now until we start adding the shading. We build up the colors. There, there. Okay, the yellow, pink. Okay. And with the back to the tropical blue, in a wash just a little bit darker than what we had done for the background because we actually want to see the color this time, is that same color is going to come in here for this guy. Right here. And I'm not worried about filling in the whole thing either. If you've noticed that. It's all about just getting that color in there. Because I do other colors over top. Now this one I do want to soften. Because I want it quite light. There. And now, oops, I missed one. I missed this little flower right here. There. Soften. Yeah. Okay, so the next color, and you notice the vibrancy, right? So if you see the colors that I'm using, see how vibrant they are. These are super bright. This is why I choose this particular palette. So they go on quite light, but then they're very vibrant when they're finished. And then Festive Green is my green. So we're going to get that on here. And the same thing, very light little wash. And you're really treating this like your first base coat. You know, the first time we base coat something, it's just kind of washy and doesn't really look all that wonderful. That's basically what we're doing here. Because I want to point, I did blot my green off just a little bit because I want to be able to use this tiny little tip to get into this little point. Look at that. Just like a liner, you can get right in here. You just pretend you're using that one little hair off the tip. Okay. Paint these in. And then mop. And with the mop, really, what you're doing is you don't swish it around. You just pity patting because it's taking the moisture off. And then just lightly rub it on a dry piece of paper towel if you think it's getting dirty. And here, go along and do my little stem, just right off those little tips. And I got to point out while I'm doing this too, and I commented this in my other videos, is my eye prescription has changed seriously. And I need new glasses, so I'm having trouble focusing with things that are really close up. So if you do happen to see me going way outside the line or something and acting like I don't know, I probably don't. So it's, it's a little frustrating right now, actually. A little bit of green in here. Green. Doesn't matter if you make something a stem that you didn't think maybe should have been a stem. That's okay. Here. And this is going to have a lot of purple in it, so it's okay how it's done. But I know where the stem is for sure. So that. And this is stem. Pea pat. And this one. Okay. And then this one here. Same thing. And see, I'm still going. I haven't even had to reload this. I can just keep on going. That's one of my favorite things about this brush. It holds all this water and stuff up in here, and it just keeps going. And let's see, this one will have purple up in there. It's kind of mixture between using a marker and a paintbrush. You're painting, but it's in a different way. Combination between watercolor, tool painting, and markers. Yeah. That goes like that. Okay. All right. So now the only one I have left to do is the purple before I do like centers and things for my first coat. And purple is actually going to be dioxazine purple. And see, once again, very, very bright, brilliant color. And we just start with these and work with brighter colors as we go. Same, water it down. And get in here. And I'm not really a flower person. If anybody's ever painted with me, I've always laughed that, we don't like floating and we call them F words and stuff, but my F word is flowers. I love to do whimsical flowers, but I actually do not know. I walk by and I smell flowers and I think flowers are beautiful and every garden needs one, but I have no idea one flower from another. It's just that pretty purple flower. So these just become a pretty purple flower. I should know what it is. I've seen them, but I do not. Okay, so there is our first coat. And now I'm going to go do the flower centers in the yellow. Get those back in there. It's another color that needs to be in there. And that's all of them. I should get them more of a point on there. Just kind of tap that yellow in there. And if it's a little bit of a watery droplet that you can see, it will dry. So you don't have to worry about it too much. I try not to color in an area that is going to be a totally different color. But with like a color like yellow, you could get away with it, but not everything you can. And then this little flower center here. Flowers, flowers, flowers. Make sure I get them all. Okay, there's our first base coat. So now we're going to start our shading now that we've got all these little base coat colors in here. And so we've got two different choices here. You can go into the larger brush. I'm going to start with my bigger one, and I might use my smaller one for some of these little bits. But you can do everything if you want with a little smaller the brush, whatever makes you happy. And I'm going to put this here so I don't go off screen, because this is where I will for sure. And I'm going to do it in exactly the same value. So the same color that I started with for the base coat, except when I'm going to work it with the full value, it's going to be totally different in its strength. So to start with, start on the bottom. So with my zinc, and I only put a tiny bit on my palette, so I need a little bit more. With zinc, for an example, is I'm going to shade it with the zinc in full strength. So I'm going to go down the sides first, and see it's already much darker. So it's basically eliminated color, giving you the same value. And here. This is why I like the really light color to start with, because it sort of creates that, the lighter shade. It creates a bit of a highlight. And I shaded up the sides, and I'll do it on this one as well, because I like my floats to dry before I go across them. So this here's the same. We'll go up the sides. And I pull my floats towards me. So by that way, to me, I get a lot more control. So if one of those people that does have a hard time doing this, try pulling them towards you. Turn your piece upside down. And you might find that a little bit easier. And I always tell people too, when you're floating and you're not quite comfortable, try a different brush. There's always a better way. There might be something that's going to work a little better for you that maybe didn't work for somebody else. So that will cross there. And now I'm just going to kind of wing it where these little divots are on the side to create a float. So there was there and here. Oops, get up there. Almost went the wrong way. And then under here. So that's given us part of what we were doing. Now this one, same thing. So cross here. If you're worried about these, you can just chalk yourself a line to use, a little light pencil or something. But you know what? Have you ever looked at a light bulb? They're not perfectly straight anyway. And here. How cool is that? I like that. I'm going to darken this one a bit under here. Didn't show up. And then I'm going to go back after and we'll do black. So that's the first shade on there. And the highlight on here, of all things, is the blue. Who knew? So we're back into our tropical blue. And it's going to have a highlight. And the blue is very light as well. So we're doing very light watery floats. So to highlight, I'm just going to put a very light, just a little scooch of blue, just a hint. Nothing, don't want to create a ton of color in there, just a little bit. Same here. I always think that makes it look really pretty. And then I deepen my shading on those with lamp black. That's the final shading on them. Okay. Just did this one, we'll do here. And basically where we already were, so we'll do on the sides first. Two. And I will take my little mop and just soften those a bit, just because. I do a lot just because. So and I'm not doing a whole float as much as I'm just kind of enhancing these little lines under here because I wanted more of the dark on the sides. So there is our little base. There's one, now the other one. Same up the side. So you notice when I'm floating these, I'm just kind of floating each section separately so that it helps to kind of create a little bit of a roundness instead of just going sound effects. Yeah. And then the same, scooch along. There. Okay. Look how fun that is. So something that I show you with the pen, and you can do it or don't have to do it. It's just, I like doing it. I find it relaxing when I do. So if you look on here, I have these little dots. The little dots I actually did put on ahead of time, but I found because I added some liner work at the very end when I was finished, I put the little dots on last, and that's just with my Identi-Pen. So it's something that you could do either before painting or after painting. It doesn't really matter, but it's just little dots, and they're little pitty pats. I just kind of do these little dots like so, just kind of create little bits of shading along places. As it kind of added a little dimension, and I do it where I'm doing my shading. So it's basically the shading. So you can, or not. I like the look it gives me. It gives it a little bit of texture. But, you know, like I said, it's just something that you could do or not do. But I call them my shading dots. So you only put them where you're going to be doing shading. And they're incomplete. They're just kind of just adding a little bit of dimension and just along the bottom. And I thought it gave it a little something, something. I like all my pieces to have a little something. And it also helps you make your piece your own a little bit too, because you're adding your own little elements to a stamp, which is what I like. These little, I call them my Stampendoodles. But that's what I like about them, because now it becomes more yours. You've added something that the stamp didn't come with and kind of made it yours. And if you like to sketch and doodle, you could sketch in a butterfly or something if you wanted to, or add a phrase, some words. You can do anything. The stamp is just an add-on, and by using the pens and stuff, you're just creating a little added dimension. You're making it all cohesive. All right, so back to this. So these are done. Now, I am going to start with the pink, and I'm going to go back into my dragon fruit, and we're going to start our shading. Shading with the colors that we already used. So my dragon fruit on the red flowers. And so my float's very tiny. Pardon my mess on my palette. Is I only load just the little tiny bit of my brush, if you can see this here, very tiny bit, and I work it into my brush. So the only paint that you should see is just on the little tip. So there's not a lot of paint in here. And then I actually almost work off the tip a little bit and just kind of pitty pat in my little floats at the base. But see how much darker that got already? Isn't that pretty? And of course, mop will soften that out a little bit. And then the bottoms of the little pink down here. Okay, that's that pink. with pink. Same thing. Same little flower. It doesn't take long for these to brighten because it looks so washed out at first. There. And we got these other pink ones up here. The same. I'm just going around the flower centers. Something. And then this, we got a little few more petals, so it's a little bit trickier. But I am doing each petal separately. And trying, in your mind, just kind of think if the sun was coming down, the shadows would be on the bottom and the highlights would be on the top. So give yourself a light source. Draw the little, pretend you got a little happy sun up here. That's usually the best way to try to figure out where your highlights and stuff are. That's so pretty. And then we will go into, because you know it's never done. If we look at, see it's almost orange. This is the same color palette, but it's almost orange. You're going to see why. We're going to go into tangerine. Yes, we are. Tangerine. Because tangerine goes with pink. Orange goes with pink. So we get a little tangerine. And we're going to highlight. Because we can. I'll go back to the first one because I want my floats to dry. So I go along the top and see, it changes color. It's pink and orange. And I actually tend to use just the tip of my brush. Instead of trying to flatten the whole thing, I'm just kind of pulling, like pity-pattying it. So now it's almost becoming a little bit on the orange side, but that's okay. That's what we want. And then highlights on these little guys. I just like these color palettes. I think they're really cool. And then this one, same thing. I always like how it just changes color and how everything gets brighter. The more I play with it, the more layers I add. Fun. It is such a quick project. Here. So that's the next shading on there. And because we're going to be really weird now, I want to play with this fun yellow flower, and it's shaded in purple. Of all things, dioxazine purple. It's purple and yellow. So I'm going to shade the same thing. We're going to want very little on here. Just enough to give me a hint of purple. Which flower is it? This one. So here, the flowers are primarily purple, but the yellow is kind of the undercoat. Because we're going to highlight those tips with a brighter color after. So we're going to just shade them around the centers. I have no idea the little doodad there. And around the flower. So make sure you separate all your flowers and then worry about where the flower center is, which is in here somewhere. There, down here. Oops. And you can actually clean these little spots off very easily. Just wet your brush, take them away. It's a nice little wash. And the middle one. So the best is just to find the flower center and work from there. Like so. There. And depending on how light this is, I might actually go and deepen the shading a second time. It just depends on how it's all coming together and depends on how dark my first one was. Just all depends on how you think it blends with all the other stuff at the end. Because it all changes color as we go. And just soften a little bit. Sometimes twice is nice. It just, each time we go over it, it just gets brighter. This is all purple up here. Okay, so that's the purple. Now this is purple. We've already done it purple, but it will have it will be shaded in blue. But I'm going to darken the shading first with the purple because it stays a light purple on the top, but a darker purple on the bottom. So we're actually going to add to deepen this. And then I'm going to tint this, deepen it after with the blue because it'll change the colors even more. Let the colors kind of, because the colors are washes and thinned, they allow the colors underneath to work with it. So pretty. Okay. Now, with my blue, I'm going to do the highlights on this purple flower before I go back to deepen the shading on this one. So this I just thought was kind of fun. We're just kind of tapping in just a little hint of, almost like washing it. I'm going to add it down here, just pitty-patting it in here so you're kind of getting some blue. So didn't do the whole thing, just pitty-patted it in there to give tints of color. As long as your paint is watery, you can do that. Get one in there. Maybe a little down here just to darken that. And I'm going to bring this blue down along the base too, just to darken it a bit. So it's almost like a two-tone effect. A little purple, a little blue. A little purple, a little blue. That's those guys. Scooch back to this one, back to the purple again. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do is we're going to highlight with saffron. And saffron is not quite as, it's more of a yellow. So we're going to, with a little saffron, we're going to highlight this yellow and then we're going to deepen the purple. And it's all, like I said, it's all the layers. So it's, even though that yellow doesn't seem to have a place, it actually did because it was like the start of the colors as to how they'll layer when they're done. So a little bit of yellow on these tips. Just to change it, and then I'm going to deepen my purple. Just tapping it in there. Just look for all your little points. Just tap in a little highlight. You can even go over the purple too if you wanted to. I think it's okay if you go over some of the purple. Just get that hint of yellow in any spots, especially if you have any little white spots that you want to cover. There. Okay. give that a quick dry, and then I'm going to deepen the shading, the purple, just to pop it a little bit. Okay, and my purple. You see how this builds up the layers of color? So pretty. It doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit to add extra color. There. So that popped it a little bit. A little added color. Okay, so the yellow, the little yellow flowers, they were bright yellow. And I can go back, because of the yellow is yellow, the bright yellow is just a base. It has no other purpose. We're going to go straight into saffron yellow for shading these, just to add, because I wanted the light yellow to stay there. So saffron. And we're going to go at the bases towards the center. Everything gets shaded twice. Along the bottom and under and there. Same one with here. Underneath and here. And you know, while we've got this out, let's keep doing anything that's yellow. So we've got our little flower centers. Just kind of tap it in there. You can't really shade it as much as I'm sort of shading it, but I'm just tapping it so it's a little bit mottled. Not strong in the two colors. And green. So festive green. We'll stay with the festive green for the first shading, because it's quite highly pigmented. The yellow is pretty much the only one I don't reshade with on the bright yellow. Okay, so the green, the same green, just get those little shade the leaves at the base. If you want, you can tap in, like especially under the flowers. You can go over, I go over not all of the stem, but just a little bit of the stem here and there, just to brighten it up a bit. I like to have some of the two-tone in there because I'm going to put yellow over top after, and that will make a difference on how it picks up the color. Just tapping in a little bit, especially like the shadows and at the base of the flowers. A bit green and the leaf. This is actually a pod there. Base of the flower, and just using the tip. Okay, that's that one. So quick. And this one. So we want to shade the bottom of this thing for sure. And a few little leaves under the petals. The pod. I'm just sketching it along so it's picking up a little bit, not all. under here. That comes down here. Pretty. Okay. It's getting interesting. So now we are going to do the blue flower, and that stays with the tropical blue. And we're going to do some floating in here and just sort of tapping it along, like the little bumpy things there, just tap it in and along the bottom. So you still have a bit of a highlight on the top. And mop it, soften the bottom. So there's really you're just kind of tapping in the color. As long as you don't get a solid line, you've got pretty much, you have all the control you need for this. Because this flower is really unique in that it gets shaded with the blue and then it gets highlighted with green. So highlighting with the festive green is very soft. It just along the tip, just a little bit. Tapping a little green on the tips, just so it picks it up a little bit. Doesn't need a lot, just a tiny bit. Cool. So now is to deepen the shading on the red flowers and the yellow flowers. So the deepening on the yellow flowers is going to be with the tangerine, just to make it a little bit oranger. So of course tangerine goes at the base. And then the petals inside the leaves. And underneath. And a little pity pat. That's that one. This one. And then I'm also going to do a little bit more in the flower centers, just to add a little darker. So each little dabby dab is smaller than the one before it. Okay. Next is cinnamon drop. Cinnamon drop is how we're going to deepen the shading on the pink flowers. And that'll make the pink ones pop. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Look at that. Pop. Look at a big difference, hey? And up here. And this one. So if you wanted to, of course at this point, this is where you could use your 1/4" angle shader. If you really wanted to get in there and do these really tidy little floats, but I like mine a little washy, blotchy. There. Okay, how easy is that? So you see how this is yellowed and these are not, and there is a reason for that. So what we're going to do now is, like I said, we're going to get the bright yellow out, we're going to get our quill, and we are going to make a real watery mess because we can. So very, very, very super watery. So we're gonna go, it's like so almost transparent, like we did with the blue when we did the background at the beginning. Very, very, very transparent. Like such a hint of color. Because the yellow actually is very, very strong color. So we're gonna very watery. And then we go, hold your breath, like so. And go over the entire piece with yellow, over everything, including what you've painted, because it changes everything. And keep it very, very wet. And I go over everything, so it actually changes how the pieces look. And this one too. And I don't know why I did this. I like the way the yellow changes the colors, and it just kind of, it tones things down. It gives it kind of grounds all the colors. It's hard to explain, but it just seems to do something. So there is the yellow. And then I'm going to dry it, because then we're going to do some more floating. And actually, before I dry it, I'm going to tap in my green. I do have some green in here. So I'm going to tap that in the little flower center here, because I figured it needed to be green. There we go. And I almost forgot, this is wet. It's a little bit of the saffron yellow on top of this green. Let me dry. Dries very quickly. Yeah, that easy. Okay, so now we're going to go and we're going to do more floating with the blue. With the tropical blue, I'm going to add a bit more enhancing to the blue. With my angle shader. And I wanted to enhance it just a little bit. And of course, when I mop it, it will soften. I can get fairly wide floats that I'm very happy with my 3/8 angle shader. But if you need to, you can always go bigger. Put a little bit of a line there. Just wet my finger, it's okay. And I'm going to use my bigger mop this time, because I was trying to soften a bigger area, so you need a bigger mop when you want to do that. There we go. There's that guy. And if you wanted to, like I've got a little extra in here, I can enhance a couple of spots if I think I want to. Maybe especially down towards the bottom. Just added bits, you know, if you think you need to add a little bit. You don't have to, but if you feel your piece is lacking a little bit, just a few here and there. If you start doing them all, then you're going to want to do everything. We don't want to do everything. Here, not a lot. Sticking towards the bottom, I think. Maybe a little bit there is good. Okay, that part is good. That one's done. And this one. very soft. And again, I'm just going to add a little bit down in here. Not a lot, a little bit. Isn't that fun? Yeah. Okay, just gonna dry this and then we bring out the best part. Two parts, pen and glitter. So with my Pen, I think this one is still good. There's a couple of them. Here's another one, I think this one. Let's try this. So with the thin side is I decided to do some little squiggles. So you see I've got little squiggles on here. And I just kind of round and a couple of dots and a squiggle dots. I don't want anything perfect here. Just kind of skip along till you've got some sort of lines. And this will not come off. If you were to use maybe a micron or something, you'd have to be careful. As long as there's no varnish or mediums on here, you should be okay. But with an pen, it's pretty foolproof. I can put varnish and glitter over top of this pen with no worries. You should always test your products, so never take my word. Never take anybody's word. Always test. So you can test it on a little piece of paper or something. And I'm just going to draw little lines through here. Little squiggly ones. They're not straight. I don't like straight lines. So there, that. Oh! And this one. So we're probably just on, you know, 1/16 or an 1/8, between a 1/16 and an 1/8 from the edge, just wherever you think you want to put it. And now it stops looking like a stamped piece. It actually looks like, you know, an ornament. It's a hand-painted ornament now, not just, you know, a stamp on a piece of wood where you didn't feel that you were, you know, that you didn't have any part in its creation. Now you have. You've created these great little designs, pieced your little stamps together, and created a great little piece. And it's individual because wherever you put the stamps becomes sort of whatever you do with them. All right, isn't that fun? Okay. And now you're ready for the best part? I'm ready for the best part. And the best part is glitter. You can never have enough glitter. And my favorite glitter is this. Holograph Illusions by DecoArt. Love this. It's got just a hint of, it's got a few little speckles in it. It goes on white, but it does dry clear. And it is so fun. So fun. So I'm going to get my glitter. So it's going to look white when you put it on the palette, but do not freak out and do not panic because it doesn't have any bearing in what you're going to do with the finished piece. I didn't shade this flower. No one reminded me. Hang on. Very quickly. Just quickly with my cinnamon drop. It'll look better if I shade it. There we go. If I did, I didn't do a very good job, but I think I missed it. I was so excited as I was getting towards the glitter. That's better. There we go. Okay, so glitter. Let that dry for a minute. So I'm going to scoop up my glitter like so and just put it on. It's not going to hurt your pen. If you're ever not sure when you're going to work with a pen, spray it. Spray it with a fixative. You can never go wrong. But I'm not going to like work at it like hardcore. I'm just going to put it lightly on there. And it is looking a little milky, but it will dry. And when it dries, it's clear. It's also protected. It's like a little varnish on here. Gives it a little bit of a coating. So there's one. And then this one. If you're never not sure, let your pen dry as well. You can hit it with the heat gun just to let it dry, but very rare. The only one that my biggest concern at any time I use pens is matte medium. Matte medium seems to have mind of its own. It's like the best thing ever, but it has whatever's in it, unlike my pens. But then again, Identa pen is the only pen that does seem to work without any issues. If you put pen on a varnished surface and you can wipe it off, then you've got a problem. That's not the pen to use. That's the best way to check it. Here. That's it, you guys. We're gonna just spread this out a little bit. And as it dries, it will be, there. Can't even tell. Look how it changed from white to just this pretty little color. And you can add a little ribbon for hanging. You can make a little garland of light bulbs. The light bulbs are on my website, www.paintingwithdeb.com. I do carry the kits for these and the stamp set, of course. And, of course, as always, Stampendous.com. Especially in the US, I ship from Canada, so that's my primary. But if you just want to grab a set of stamps to start painting away and create tons of projects, go on over to Stampendous.com. You can buy all these and create away. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing what everybody's created. Happy painting!